All right, welcome back, Chelsea fans, to another episode of the London is Blue podcast. That is right. We are back during the international break, kind of towards the end of it, but during the international break for yet another special, joined by the illustrious Matt
Duh.
Law. Matt, how are we doing?
Hello. Well, yeah, busy. I like to think that when transfer windows shut, usually my modus operandi is to try and take a minute or two, just calm down, try and talk to a lot of people actually normally, just to get sort of an overall picture. It's usually good to talk to people when transfer windows are shut. They give you a very good overall picture of things, and everyone's a little bit more relaxed and they speak a little bit more freely. But I've got to be honest with you, and I'm getting my apologies in early here. It has been frantic because of what's happened at your other favourite club, Tottenham Hotspur,
Oh,
with Daniel Levy, which is the biggest news in 25 years at Tottenham. And it's just killed me from the point of trying to take a breath and get some considered views. So I apologise for that in advance. But yeah, I've been absolutely flat out. It's been insane.
well, yeah, I think you might have some who take offense to the other favorite club
That
narrative
was
there.
pointed.
Yeah, yeah. No, I got that. But look, in this one, we're gonna quickly cover off on the crazy end to the window that
Yep.
was, because obviously a lot happened since we last talked on the 25th of August. We will then go into a small mailbag section from our lovely Discord followers, and then round this out with the segment that everyone's waiting for, Matt. Matt predicts the rest of the season, at least the matches that are available to predict right now. So, lots going on here, but let's dive in. Just to go through the ins, I know it's old news at this point, but Alejandro Garnacho does come in a couple days before deadline day. Chelsea do get that announcement done at home right after the Fulham match. So not a massive surprise if you followed along for the entire window that deal got done, but decent fee. The player seems excited to join Chelsea. Any notes from you on that transfer and kind of the way that everything wrapped up with Garnacho?
It wrapped up really easily, didn't it? I mean, it was literally it almost seemed like just a case of pushing a green button on Garnacho, and it was done. His brother was there, he was there, it was all ready to go. I seem to be more positive about this deal than most people. I feel like I'm in a minority. Um, I've always quite fancied this. I've always really liked Garnacho as a player, as an opposing. Whenever he plays against Villa or a team that sort of I'm covering rather than Man United, who I've never covered and clearly never supported, he's frightened the life out of me lots of times. Garnacho, I think he's got a lot of very, very good skill sets. Clearly, things haven't gone brilliantly for him at United in the recent future. But I mean, last season he still scored 6 goals. You probably say he'd had one of his worst United seasons last season, and yet his numbers weren't terrible given what was going on. I I genuinely as well. We with our Manchester United reporter James Ducker, who's very close to United. I hope he doesn't mind me saying this. Is convinced that United will really regret letting Garnacho go for 40 million. He really thinks that in the fullness of time, this will be seen as a bargain for Chelsea. I don't know about bargain, but I definitely feel positive about it. And I think it's a really good signing.
Yeah, interesting perspective. I think there's a lot out there. Probably, I would guess most Chelsea fans are excited that the transfer part of it is done, and just to see what the field production looks like at this point from a player who does have Premier League experience, does have a decent track record in the Premier League, and at a position at left wing that is probably the most open within the team for competition. So, between him, Jamie Gittins, who also came in for more money from Dortmund over the summer, and also, Pedro Neto, has played over there to start the year. What do you think about that position now that we kind of have the full cast of
Well,
characters?
I think it's stronger than last season. And, you've got to look for in transfer windows to obviously try and progress positions and areas of the pitch and make them stronger. My opinion on paper, having them not really played yet, is that the left side is now stronger than it was last season, where you really only had Sancho for most of it. I know you could shift people around and stuff, but in terms of actual left-siders, shall we say, who were signed to play on the left side, after what happened with Madrid and whatnot, you only really had Sancho. So I think they are stronger on that side. So I think they've succeeded from that point of view. I would like to just say on Garnacho as well. Obviously, the big unknown is sort of his attitude and behaviour and everything, which has drawn a lot of criticism. But I mean, recent history would tell you that United players with that reputation, once they go elsewhere, that seems to magically disappear. You know, Rashford did not have problems at Aston Villa on loan. Sancho did not have behavioural issues at Chelsea for an entire season last season. Anthony did not have behavioural issues at Real Betis. So the evidence does suggest very much that these things about the off the pitch do tend to go away once they get out of that environment at United. And the other good thing for Garnacho, of course, he's got Enzo Fernandez there, you know, someone he knows very well from the Argentine setup. So look, maybe it's misplaced, but before a ball has been kicked by him, I feel positive about that. And I think Chelsea are stronger on the left for having it.
A interesting one is another Argentinian
Yeah, I
national, I should
forgot that.
say. Yeah, Facundo Buonanotte does come in on a straight loan from Brighton. I think the oddness around this is only amplified by the fact that then Strasbourg, after initially getting the Julian Enciso deal done, then they don't due to a medical issue, quote unquote, and then do at the end of the window get Enciso done to Strasbourg for roughly 20 million pounds or whatever. What happened here? I think you have a lot of people asking the what happened here. He's obviously not a part of the Champions League squad, despite saying I want to play Champions League and I'm excited to play Champions League. It just seemed like such an odd move in a team where I don't know how often he's going to play on a straight loan.
No, he, on the face of it, he looks like a body, doesn't he? I mean, and that sounds terribly disrespectful to him. And it kind of is terribly disrespectful. So I do apologize for that. But
that's what they call me on this podcast, Matt. Just he's just a body, you know.
That's what it looks and feels like. It's someone who you would imagine will play Carabao Cup, may well play early rounds of FA Cup, who can help take the load off Cole Palmer from the big priorities of the Premier League and the Champions League. But I haven't quite got to the bottom of this one with everything that's been going on, if I'm quite honest with you. But my guess is that it is also linked to the UEFA rules and what Chelsea signed up for within their punishment in terms of what they could do incoming against outgoing. I know he's not registered for the Champions League, which again adds an element of doubt to my theory. But I do believe that once Nicolas Jackson wasn't being sold and was being loaned, albeit with a big loan fee, that bringing in a player for a fee perhaps became trickier than it would have done. And also, if you think about it, and this does make sense, Buonanotte has not been included in the Champions League squad. Had Chelsea signed a Xavi Simons or someone of that level for, say, 50, 60 million, you can't sign them and then leave them out the Champions League squad because of the rules or because of what you've signed up to. You just can't. It would cause carnage within the squad. So I do think there is a correlation between Jackson going on loan and not being sold and the UEFA regulations that Chelsea have signed up to as part of their punishment. I'm not saying it's a direct result because I don't know that for fact, but I think there must be a correlation.
Yeah, it certainly seemed like a little bit of gamesmanship on that side of things. I guess
though we were lacking a sort of WTF signing in this transfer window from Chelsea, and this ownership does go every single window with giving us one of those signings. And I really thought we were getting to the end of it because I didn't count Enciso. He was off to Strasbourg. I know we can say that's Chelsea and whatnot, but I didn't count that. We were really lacking the WTF signing, and he is the WTF signing.
We did it, yeah. I guess on the UEFA punishment, do you have any clarity on if that is just for this season or if that is if subsequent seasons down the road?
So they have to work within the rules down the road. in terms of the squad cost ratio and what they've agreed to get it down for. My belief is that in terms of the having to have a positive transfer outcome for the players going in against the players that were going out, I would have to double check this, but off the top of my head, I think that's a one season thing. But they would still have to fit within the squad cost rulings that they've signed up to. But I would have to check back on the punishment because you've sort of thrown that one at me without any prior warning, so I haven't been able to check back.
Yeah, I'm curious about that because it would seem
it's very difficult to work within.
Yeah,
it's been
yeah.
What I would say is the UEFA rules, be it the squad cost rules and this punishment that Chelsea have had in terms of having to come up with a positive deficit and incomings and outgoings in terms of the squad, it's been way more difficult than PSR. You know, when people talk about Chelsea having to work against PSR and all that, forget it. PSR has been a walk in the park for them lately. The UEFA rules are far more difficult to get in line with.
Well, and this does bring up something because there's no way that Barcelona would be able to abide by this punishment that Chelsea obviously agreed to as part of a larger settlement. Stuff like that just makes me curious if this is just kind of a temporary get your act together, prove to us that you can get your act together, and then in the future play by the rules that everyone else plays by, or if it's something deeper than that. And if it's something deeper than that, Chelsea are at a huge strategic disadvantage, obviously, for where they're able to kind of make this team kind of competitive in the future.
Yeah, look, I think it's aimed at getting their sort of house in order and showing an ability to work towards the rules that are there and then work within the rules that are there. And to be honest, Chelsea's model, the model that the sporting directors and the ownership are implementing, which does provoke a lot of debate, actually puts them within a good chance of getting there and being able to work well within these rules, because clearly it's all to do with wage bill versus revenue, which is something in the old regime, Chelsea's wage bill to revenue percentage was way over what it would be now.
Well, and this does come off of a summer where Chelsea, from a net spend perspective, which I know people rate or don't rate net spend, but in a summer where Chelsea do sell the better part of 300 million in players, which is a record, which is an astonishing achievement, right? They bring in roughly 300 million in players. They sell roughly 300 million in players. It's a pretty interesting financial summer for the club, who have done a ton of business, right? I think should be lauded for the amount of change that has been done in a relatively short amount of time. I know the summer was a little bit longer with that extra 10 days at the beginning of the June window, but it's a pretty remarkable achievement to get to that point at the end.
It's unprecedented. As you say, it's the biggest sales in one transfer window. I've not known a club finish in the top four and rip up the entire attack like they have in terms of outgoings and incomings. Usually, if a club finishes in the top four and qualifies for the Champions League, you see minimal business rather than just rips. So what they've done is unprecedented in my mind. It is an achievement. I mean, I've got a little bit sick of football. This isn't a Chelsea thing. I've got a little bit sick of football generally, of achievements being to do with accountancy now.
Yeah,
I mean, it's pissing me off, quite frankly, and it's my love of football is waning slightly in that we call accountancy achievements, and that is the financial rules fault. That is the game's fault. That is a way bigger issue, but it is draining my love of football a little bit. But you can't not say that what they've done is unprecedented, and in an accounting sort of world, it is impressive. I will count achievements as trophies and success on the pitch and be more impressed by that, because that's what I love about football. And the accountancy side of it is really grating with me, but you can't get away from it. And I don't really understand people who don't rate net spend, because the way the rules operate now is you simply can't you can't trade and you can't really do any business without factoring in net spend. It has to be factored in. So
Yeah.
I don't really understand people who won't look at net spend or write net spend off, because that's the kind of game now in terms of trading and transfers. And people will throw Liverpool this season at me. Yeah, Liverpool didn't. They Liverpool themselves, I think, after Chelsea, have brought in the most amount of money. They brought in over sort of 200 million, and they didn't sign anyone last summer. So net spend is hugely important these days. There's no point not liking it, because that's just pointless.
Yeah. I mean, Chelsea then, like, to wrap up the ends, bring Mark Guiu back because of the Jackson saga. We'll talk about in a second. Um, Augusto asks, has there been any chatter about Guiu since returning, possibly on his role and path into the first team? Do you think he's going to play, given that he's cup time in the Carabao Cup?
I mean, I've got to be honest. When I first reported on Guiu coming back, it hadn't struck me at that point that he was cup tied for the Carabao Cup, which is a big shame. Look, I think he'll be here. I've got to be honest. I think as long as fitness issues are sorted by January, I won't be surprised to see him go out somewhere in January. But the first few games of Sunderland's season would suggest he wasn't going to play a lot at Sunderland. You know, he did play in the Carabao Cup, but there was no evidence to suggest that he was going to play an awful lot at Sunderland. So he's better off not playing an awful lot at Chelsea than he is not playing an awful lot at Sunderland. And he will certainly be on the substitutes bench while Liam Delap is injured. And the club aren't fully certain still of exactly how long that will be. I think we're talking today on Tuesday at 2:30 p.m. UK time. And I know that there was a scan on Monday, literally yesterday, that Chelsea are still waiting on further scans to be absolutely sure of a timescale on that hamstring injury. So Guiu, certainly in the short term, will have a role to play on the bench. He might not play much football.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting to talk about injuries in a second. And then probably the most strange thing that's happened with Chelsea in a minute. Ishe Samuel Smith sold to Strasbourg a couple of months ago to get some playing time. Then Ben Chilwell sold to Strasbourg on deadline day. Then Ishe Samuel Smith sold back to Chelsea, and what I assume is the same transfer fee. I don't think they could game it up very easily, and then loaned to Swansea at the end of the day to go get time back. That is a really interesting development in terms of the sister club sort of model. Any thoughts on what happened there?
Well, I can give some insight into Chilwell. I think Chilwell, I think they've done well by Chilwell. I mean, I think everyone wanted Chilwell to be treated well. And what I'm told is that they agreed to pay up part of his contract. I don't know how much of his contract, because that's private information. But a settlement was made over the remainder of his contract that then allowed a deal to be done with Strasbourg, because people will laugh at this, and I laugh at it, difficult deal selling to yourselves. It still has to go through assessed by fair market value. You can't just do what you like. And it has to be that Chilwell accepts the wages. Now, I don't think Strasbourg pay more than about 30 grand a week in UK money, in pounds. So, and Chilwell was on about £200,000 a week. So the only way that deal could get done was for Chelsea to make a settlement with Chilwell. And that was obviously aimed at getting him a club and getting him playing, particularly in a World Cup year, which again may seem fanciful, but England have real problems on the left side. It's not beyond the realms of possibility that Chilwell gets himself in the conversation. So them agreeing to do a settlement, which they don't really do, if you look back, is I think a bit of a favour to Chile, and done well by Chile. So I like that. That's good. I don't quite know what has happened with Samuel Smith. There's talk that a little bit maybe of homesickness. It's being compared to the Tyler Dibbling thing when he came to Chelsea and then went back to Southampton. I don't think we'll ever know quite what has happened there. But again, they are subject to fair market rules and Premier League rules, and you can't just move these players around willy-nilly selling to them, they won't have sold to Strasbourg, and Strasbourg sold back for considerably less, and Chelsea have somehow made money out of this because it simply wouldn't pass fair market value rules. I know that for a fact. They're quite hot on these things, particularly with sister clubs. It optically, purely optically, it doesn't look great. It's going to cause debate among other fans and cause conspiracy theories, but it's been passed by the league. It's got through the rules, so nothing wrong has happened there.
On the outs, I mean, the major story of the last week for Chelsea was Nicolas Jackson, obviously, and him going to Bayern, then not going to Bayern, then going to Bayern, and everything that kind of went with that. I now famously owe you a pint on our bet whether he would go or stay.
I wondered whether we were going to make. I wasn't going to make that public. I was going to allow that to remain private. I don't mind it being public. I didn't think you'd want that public.
I will. So here's the commitment that I make to you on future bets. I'm not going to make future bets on something that you just know more about than I do. That was a mistake by me. That's not going to happen again. I'll be smarter about that in the future. Look, this one was really frustrating for a lot of Chelsea fans, I think, who saw Delap go down, the loan canceled, then everything processed. And then you have all these quotes from Hunis this week about what the actual terms of the agreement are, the appearance level that needs to be reached for a obligation to be put into place instead of an option. This just ended up being a huge mess, didn't it?
Well, it did. And let's be fair. Initially, this is only a mess because Chelsea, for the second transfer window on the run, on the game before the transfer window is going to shut, this time instead of two strikers pulling up with fairly significant injuries, one striker does. It's pretty bad luck from that point of view. I don't think it's bad planning. They had to get the Nicolas Jackson deal going along, otherwise nothing was going to happen by the end of the window. So, it's not like you could say, right, well, they should never have let Jackson travel to Munich for that. It's pretty bad luck for the second. So that's how it starts messy, through an element of bad luck. Let's be fair about that. Then it does get messy. Now, a lot of it gets messy as well because Jackson basically wouldn't come back. It was quite simple at one stage. Delap gets injured. Chelsea cancel the loan, which is, well within their rights.
Of course.
And many people would argue a sensible course of action to take. And they, and Bayern, by the way, Bayern wrote a letter to the player as well, told Nicolas Jackson that the deal was cancelled and he was required back from Germany. Now, it then becomes very apparent very quickly that Jackson isn't going to come back. He didn't go on strike. He didn't pull an ESAP because there wasn't just the time, and it never really got that far that had to happen. But there was just no sense at that stage, when it became clear Jackson didn't want to come back, in trying to force him to, because it would have been a disaster for Enzo Maresca to deal with at that point.
Right.
Trying to manage that situation from that point onwards would have been harmful to squad unity, what he's trying to do, trying to manage it. It would have just been a mess. It would have been a real mess. And we could have, I am speculating now, but we could have got ourselves into a situation more similar to Visa or Isak if Chelsea had have dug their heels in on this. And I don't think Maresca wanted the club to dig their heels in. Maresca's made it so clear in every single press conference he does around players leaving that if a player wants to play elsewhere or doesn't want to play for Chelsea, Maresca doesn't want them. He said that so many times. He doesn't want them. He doesn't want them part of his squad. He doesn't want them round his squad. He wants them out the building. Once they've decided they want to go, he wants them out the building. He's that kind of manager. He's not someone who looks to reintegrate particularly. He's not someone who looks to rehabilitate particularly. He's very cold like that. And that's fine. That's his style. I don't think there's any way in the world that once it becomes clear that Jackson's got any reservations at all about coming back, There's no way Maresca wants him back. And
Yeah,
then you've got to just do the best deal you can do from there. And obviously there was a game of poker going on, because Bayern then pull out the deal and tell everybody the deal's cancelled from their point of view. They tell everyone they're going to go shopping elsewhere. But by that point, I don't think Chelsea were panicked by that, because by that point, Bayern really had nowhere else to shop, which is why Chelsea were actually able to increase the terms, because Bayern were left with Jackson or nothing, quite frankly.
yeah. Essie and Stan, and I think the rest of the fan base, with all of the quotes that are out there and different figures, do you know the official term of this loan, and not only just financially, but with the option slash obligation? Is there a match trigger, like a number of matches played?
So one thing that's been said by Hunis that's definitely wrong is the fact that Jackson and his agents paid £3 million or €3 million to make it happen. That didn't happen. What I'm told is that Jackson and his agents gave up about 1.5 million to help the deal happen, different to paying it back, and a different amount, half the amount. In terms of the appearances, there is a condition around 40 appearances. Now, there is disparity from where there's doubt is whether it's 40 starts or 40 appearances and what constitutes an appearance. Because what you can write into appearances is it has to be over 45 minutes, or an appearance under 45 minutes doesn't count as an appearance. Hunis has said 40 starts. I've been told it could be 40 appearances, but like I say, appearances could be broken down to number of minutes. It's very complicated.
Either way, take 40 appearances or 40 starts. 40 starts isn't going to happen there unless
Well,
Harry
40
Kane
starts
gets.
is 40 starts is almost impossible, because I think the Bundesliga season, how many games is left of it? 34, something like that. And obviously you do have cups and Champions League and everything. But like you say, with a fit Harry Kane, 40 starts is genuinely almost impossible.
And even at an appearance number, that's just kind of subject to game state, right? I mean, whether the team is up and firing, whether they're down and need a goal, like. So I guess
Yeah,
my
I
my,
mean,
my question is,
Jadon Sancho made 41 appearances for Chelsea last season. So if it were to be appearances without a condition of number of minutes, that would be unlikely but achievable, given, like I say, Jadon Sancho managed 41 for Chelsea last season. But yeah, still, the word obligation isn't really a thing
no,
anymore, is it? All these obligations, and it's not just Chelsea, a lot of these obligations now are conditional obligations. I think Rasmus Højlund's obligation at Napoli has some conditions on it. So there's been some fairly loose uses of the word obligation in recent transfer windows, I believe.
it's definitely an option, it feels like. And if it's an option, and let's just pretend that he has a great season or he has a bad season, like there's a huge chance that that is not going to be fully capitalized on at the end of this
Well,
season.
what I would say is if he has a great season, I still think it sets a benchmark on the price. It's not a guarantee on the price, but if he has a great season, I still think it starts the price at a certain asking point, which I still think is helpful. If he has a season in after which Bayern or another big club want to sign him because he's scored 15 to 20 goals at Bayern and done very well and enhanced his reputation, I still think that does help a conversation starter on the price. I do. Obviously, if he has a bad season or an average season, then it means very little, quite frankly.
Yeah.
But the loan fee, I would say, the loan fee again. If we're all going to be accountants, the loan fee is incredibly good for Chelsea in terms of against his book value for the year and everything like that. So accountancy wise, the loan fee works very well for Chelsea, and it is a staggeringly big loan fee, I've got to say.
Yeah. The other, just quickly, the other business that was done near deadline day is Nkunku to AC Milan. That seemed to be a pretty straightforward thing, despite the fee not being quite what I think Chelsea fans had kind of hope to see. It was a good move for him, and he seemed relatively happy. There were some nice words shared between both parties at the end. Um, so, obviously, good luck to him in the future. The other thing that I quickly want to address before we get into the fun stuff, injury news is kind of tough right now. As we are
Yeah.
talking this morning, Dario Sugo had quad surgery. The club and himself both shared that picked it up on international duty. That seems relatively serious if it's something quad related. That's a difficult one. Any additional insight as to what happened there?
No, I mean, I literally learned of that just before we were coming on this, so
Okay,
apologies on that. That's kind
check
of been
on that.
breaking news. Um, it's a blow though, because obviously with Lavia's injury record as well, there is a lot of optimism, or there certainly was just before the international break, that Lavia will be back fairly swiftly after the international break. But Lavia's injury record doesn't fill anybody with any confidence, and Asugu was really signed as the depth for that midfield with the Champions League. So that is a blow, and that is a worry. And the injuries, look at Paris Saint-Germain as well. The injuries are already a worry with the Club World Cup and everything else. I mean, I've seen people who wanted to very quickly in the season try and write off any potential impact of the Club World Cup. But the evidence so far, if you look at PSG and Chelsea, is that it's got to be a worry that there's been this many sort of muscle injuries so early in the season for those two clubs. And
Oh my God, yeah. They've been playing
you
football for a year straight. How
yeah.
could it not be?
Well, it's a concern moving forwards. It's a big concern moving forwards. I was told not too long ago not to be too worried about Cole. That Cole is very much a management issue, and they're being careful with him and sensible with him. So I would hope that he's back after the international break, and there's nothing to worry about there. As I said on Delat, there's been a lot more scans. There's a scan on Monday. They're still waiting to find out exactly how long he will be out for. So fingers crossed, touch wood on that one.
Well, and that one is in particular, I think, really concerning because part of his game is those sprints in behind and like the physicality of his game and the hamstring. If you're especially if you're not doing surgery, is a really challenging injury to come back from at kind of the most high level at the end of the day. So it's not just like, hey, is he back in training, and hey, is he potentially like a sub? It's like, what does the contribution look like? What is his game going to have to adapt to ensure that he's not doing that again? I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not a doctor, but we've seen enough hamstrings at Chelsea to know what that really looks like at the end of the day.
and we had Maresca just before the international break saying that Caicedo had that they were having to be careful with Caicedo's training to try and manage him through so that he doesn't suffer an injury. And obviously he's been away with Ecuador, so there is reason to be fearful on the injury front for Chelsea, I believe, and I'm still worried about the impact of the Club World Cup.
Any notes on Badia Shield before we move on?
None, sorry.
Alrighty, those are the major ones, and obviously that does have a huge impact to squad depth here. So let's dive into the mailbag portion. I'm keeping a running list of follow ups for one of our next sessions, which is the UEFA punishment just this season, and then the couple of podcasts ago talking about add-ons and how add-ons work with the signing and the contracts and stuff like that. So we will definitely follow up on those. You guys have our word on that. But Discord had a fair few questions. We'll kind of do a lightning round before we get into the predictions, the Matstradamus predictions for the season.
Let's do it.
So there was a question from O Boogie NYC about what types of candidates Chelsea are looking for the January window. We can't just have a week to be out of the window. We're talking about January here. Goalkeeper, center back. Also, any updates on front of shirt? So, any part of that question that you want to tackle?
So, what we've just talked about, the injury situation is going to have a massive impact on January, clearly, looking forwards. If that injury situation doesn't get better or, God forbid, gets worse, they will have to look at things. And, we're going to have, do they keep Guy around? Do they send him back? Do they have to get in another striker because of Delap and he hasn't managed to come back as they'd hoped? Do you have an issue in midfield? Does the look so far? The centre backs have looked good. I was glad that they put their faith in the centre backs that they've got at the club after Colwell's injury. I suspect that was always done with the eye on, well, we'll see if we need to do something in January. So I think certainly the centre backs one is the one they'll be keeping a close eye on in terms of whether they feel they need to act in January. It's very early to discuss all this, of course. Mm-hmm. And then on the front of shirt, look, I haven't double checked. I will double check. But clearly the options were narrowing, and they're very hopeful of getting something long term done. Let's hope before Christmas.
Yeah. Do you hope, or do you think that the City victory against the Premier League will impact that?
Well, it could, and this is definitely something on my list that I was going to check, because it's not beyond the realms of possibility that they've been in talks with companies that could have not fallen foul, but could have red flagged or flagged up on the APT rules. If City had sort of lost that, or it hadn't been settled, it does open the door now for things, for deals to be done with related parties that should now get through. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility that City verdict has a knock-on effect for Chelsea.
I also have a question about goalkeeper from Nick Vaida that I will save for next time, because it's a detailed question, probably needs a little bit more digging on your side. Grizz asks, the reports of Maresca insisting to add experience to the team. Obviously, Chelsea have a model in which adding more youthful players is the most beneficial to kind of future sales and things like that. Did Maresca get the balance that he reportedly wanted heading into this season?
Well, look, what we tend to put together is experience and age, and I do that. For me, an experienced player is a player of a certain age. Now, Maresca and Chelsea and the sporting directors have argued with me about this in the past when I've written certain articles, sort of saying that older players would be beneficial to their chances of winning. And their view is that you can be experienced without necessarily being of a certain age, through games played, through leagues played in, through tournaments played in, through all kinds of various things. So, for instance, I think they would see Garnacho as an experienced player. He has international experience. He's played at a very big club before. He will have X amount of appearances and all that kind of thing. So when we talk about experience, I think quite often we're talking across purposes to what the club judge as experience. Now, that's a debate in itself of whether we all agree on that. But that's, I think, where when we might look at transfers or transfer windows and say they still haven't really signed any experience, I think there'd be a strong argument from the club that what they judge as experience, they would say they have brought experience in. So, I mean, Gittins, for instance, you couldn't possibly claim as experienced, I don't think, given he's never really played in England, his age, his profile and everything. But I certainly think that they would argue that Garnacho, for instance, is experienced.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Experience does not necessarily correlate to...
You don't have to be 30 years old, basically. Yeah.
Here's an interesting one, and this is from our friend Caleb, who I think asked a question that a lot of Chelsea fans are interested in understanding from the point of the journalist, which is, broadly speaking, Chelsea fans perceive an anti-Chelsea narrative in the media. Do you see it this way? And is this something that fans of all clubs claim against their club? Do you get where I'm going with that? That there would be an anti-Villa bias in the media if you're a fan of Villa. Yeah. And so I guess that's a two-part question, but I'm interested in your perspective.
I think most fans see it. I think most fans see it with their clubs because it tends to just be human nature that you remember what you perceive to be negative or unfair articles far more than you will remember the nice, fluffy articles or nice interviews with people saying positive things and nice things. I think that's just a human nature to that. And the big clubs, it becomes even more emphasized with. because they get so much more coverage. You know, the big clubs do get all the big coverage, and therefore you will have far more breadth of opinions, you will have far more headlines attached to those clubs. So it tends to be amplified around the bigger clubs, albeit that then becomes a debate as well, because other clubs get very annoyed with the so-called bigger clubs getting more coverage than their clubs. So you can never do right by anybody, quite honestly. But I guarantee you that all football fans of Premier League clubs will argue that there is a agenda or narrative against their club in some form.
Do you understand why Chelsea fans feel that way?
I used to more. I used to under the Abramovich era more, because I used to think that there was far more commentary around one side of the Abramovich ownership, e.g., question marks around his various businesses and relationships and moral issues, than there was around him as a Premier League owner and others. I'm having to tread quite carefully here in how I say this, but I hope you understand what I'm saying.
Mm.
So I wouldn't have necessarily agreed with it before, but I used to understand it more in the Abramovich era. I still think that now is an issue with the new owners, in that I still think there is a little bit of commentary around the new owners that is a little bit outdated, and goes back to maybe when they first took over, when mistakes were first made, and Todd was sporting director and all that kind of thing. And I still think some of the commentary around Chelsea can be a little bit, shall we say, past its sell-by date. But I don't see it quite the same as maybe I used to see it when it was the previous ownership. I hope all that makes sense. I've tried to articulate myself while being a little bit careful with how I say things.
Yeah. We got a slightly easier question for you from Solis. Favorite beer and or wine and or both?
Wine is red wine. I do like a Malbec, but I'm more of a beer guy. So I'm going to let you into my life a little bit here, because I've had a slight problem over the last 6 months. I love IPA beers, and yet I've found they've started to give me quite severe headaches. And I have researched this, and chemically within IPAs, it can set off headaches in people. And to start with, I passed it off as me getting old and not being able to handle my beer as well. But the more research I've done on it, you can have a slight reaction to IPAs where you do get headaches. So sadly, my favorite kind of beer is attacking me. And therefore, I've eased off the IPAs a little bit. So I've gone more back towards pale ales, which don't tend to give me the headaches. And I do, this was our bet, wasn't it? I do love a Guinness, a trusty old Guinness. I love a Guinness. So
It's
there
a
you go.
classic for a reason. It's a classic for a reason. Yeah, it is interesting. I having been a person who's been lucky enough to share a couple of beers with you, I don't think that your form has fallen off. I think it is. I think the
I like
composition
to
of
think so. Yeah.
the
I
beer
like
is
to think
just
so. Yeah,
tough.
but something started working and attacking against me. Maybe my body's telling me something. But yeah, I've eased off the IPAs and diverted more into the pale ales of late for headache sakes, and it has worked actually.
Okay. All right. There's a good question here from T Clot. Do you perceive the club's pursuit of Simmons, Firmine, Mignon as attempts to add under markets or undervalued market assets, or more as players that would have added competition to the squad? There's certainly both, but I'm inclined to believe it was more financial than sporting. Any thoughts on that?
That is a great. I've got to say, who asked that question? That's a great question.
T Clot.
T-Clot, that is a fantastic question. I think the two things are related. I do think that certainly with Simmons and Lopez, they were looking for an opportunity to take advantage of something. Simmons had to leave RB Leipzig. He had to. The club couldn't keep hold of him. He was clear he wasn't staying. Chelsea knew that, and I think Chelsea thought they were potentially able to take advantage of that and get a bargain. And that became impossible once the prospect of a potential bidding war with Tottenham came in. And you saw it, they just stepped away. They were never going to enter a bidding war. And that, to me, suggests while they liked the player, they liked the idea of getting him under market value more than the player himself. Similarly with Fermin Lopez, Barcelona have had terrible registration issues, which they seem to have every single transfer window, and nothing ever seems to get done about it. And they seem to be able to do what they like because UEFA don't seem to want to be able to punish them. And it really pisses me off. And I could do a whole show on this. And therefore, Chelsea again thought on Fermin Lopez there would be a market opportunity because Barcelona were once again in a mess. Once again, Barcelona seem to be able to just do what they like and the mess doesn't have any consequences. And therefore, the market opportunity sort of passed them by because they weren't forced to sell, really. So similar issues on both, I think, but great question.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. There's a few questions about Villa, the transfer window, stuff like that, but I will end this section on what Villa European away trip are you most excited about? That is from our friend Techie Tiger.
Well, I won't get to do any of them because I'm mainly covering Chelsea in Europe this season. I'm going to Munich next week, which I'm really looking forward to. I'm doing Atalanta away. I've never been to Atalanta. So I'm really looking forward to that. And of course, the one I predicted and hoped for, Naples at the end of January, I cannot wait for. So I'm doing 3 of Chelsea's 4 league phase trips. I am doing one with Tottenham as well to Monaco, which, sorry for everybody who's that's going to annoy. So
Wow,
given I'm
really
doing all those trips, I'm not
tough travel there, man.
Exactly. But I'm not going to actually get on any of Villa trips. But the one that I think fans are excited about is Feyenoord away because it's Rotterdam, and that conjures up lovely memories of European cup winning 1982 and all that. So that's going to be the romantic one for those who travel with Villa.
All right, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, really, really tough European travel there for you. I feel for you. You know, it's
Oh no!
Napoli.
Look, I said I'm massively excited, but don't feel for me. I'm massively excited. I don't want any sympathy whatsoever.
Yeah,
It's a trip to Atalanta that I've always fancied. The Naples one's the dream. Munich's amazing. I mean, Monaco's Monaco with Spurs. So yeah, great travel.
It's gonna be like the start of Oktoberfest too in Munich. You're gonna be.
Do you know what? I've researched this and we miss it by a week. So I'm hoping I'm hoping there's like the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. I'm hoping there's an Oktoberfest Fringe.
Oh, of course.
There's got to be, hasn't there? There's got to be some cool little bars that do a little kind of build-up festival to the main thing. That's what but the main festival we just miss out on.
I will. I'll save some of our Oktoberfest stories for when we did that trip for a future session at a pub. But man, what a wild time that was! Absolutely loved it. One of my favorite experiences. Let's move into the final thing, and I think this is what the people came for. You're going to put the Matt Stradamus crown of predictions on thine head. And look, we had a number of questions. One from 11 Aspies, the Matt Stradamus prediction for the season. And we're doing the full thing. We're going match by match by match by match. And
I'm happy to. I guess we're going to do it in chunks on episodes, right? We're not now going to do 35 games.
How do you want to do it? Because I was just
let's do it to the next international break. So surely it's going to be boring for everyone for us to list 35 games now. All right. I think chunks. So this next break between international breaks.
So that is okay. Okay, I got it on the chunk here. All right. So let's do. Where do Chelsea end up against Brentford after the international break?
It's Brentford away, isn't it?
It is.
They win. I don't have to give an actual score prediction, do I? I feel that's unfair.
No.
Victory at Brentford. I'm confident on that one.
Victory at Brentford. Okay, so that is a win. Getting this written down so we have it for.
So am I.
I am also a win on that one.
Good.
No one asked, but I'll just throw my hat in the ring.
No, I think you should.
So on the 20th of September, Manchester United away. What is your thought on that?
That's a good one, isn't it? You're going to quote me all these statistics about Chelsea being rubbish at Old Trafford and rubbish against Man U and never
Yep.
winning there.
Yep.
And
Yep. I am.
I'm going to go for. I'm going to sort of lean into that a little bit and go for a draw. I'd
That was
still be
mine too.
surprised if they lose, but I'm going to go for a draw there.
And United are bad right now. It's a
United
tough.
are bad right now, and they shouldn't get anything against Chelsea, but they do. It's hard to ignore that record there, and also I still always feel with United, surely at some point they get competent, but probably not.
Long may
But
it
also
happen.
that United away game as well, and I've written about this, comes after the Bayern Munich trip. That for me
Yep.
has an impact because United don't have any European football. There we go. There's my reasoning for a draw as well,
So
because that will be
so
Chelsea's first game after a tough European trip.
so let's do Bayern v Chelsea, the Champions League. What happens there?
Bayern, I'm sorry, Bayern win that for me.
Yep. I agree with that. Actually, you know what? I'm going for a draw there. I think we're going to be okay. I'm going to go. Let's go Chelsea Brighton. This will
Chelsea
be
win.
on the 27th, and this will be after a League Cup game against Lincoln.
Yeah, don't care about that. Chelsea win that too, but that I don't see that impacting the Brighton game. I don't like Brighton's summer, actually. I don't like the summer they've had too much. I know they kept hold of Baleba, but I don't fancy them for a great season, actually. And yeah, Chelsea win.
They
So
just
I'm going.
they just beat City though. I mean,
They just beat City,
yeah.
but they lost to Everton quite comfortably. I'm not concerned by that. I actually also think if we get onto the table, I think Chelsea are going to finish higher than City in the table this season. So
Ooh,
there we go.
Okay. Chelsea Liverpool to round out this group of fixtures before the international break in October.
Home or away is that?
It is home against Liverpool.
That is such a tough one to call. I'm going to have to go for a defeat, though, I'm afraid.
Okay.
I'm going to go for a Liverpool win on that one.
I am going for a Chelsea win on that one.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Yeah, I
That
am
is much more interesting, and I love that. And I'm ashamed of myself that I've gone for the obvious.
obviously we're making these predictions not knowing kind of any future injuries or anything like that. So disclaimer there, but I do think that Liverpool's midfield is going to be a huge issue for them this year, and they're going to have to cope in different ways than they'd probably hope to.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
I'm still going to go the Liverpool. I'm going to stick with my Liverpool win, but there we go.
So you have a win against Brentford. So let's just do the league. Win against Brentford, win against or draw against United, win against Brighton, loss against Liverpool. All right.
Yes.
So that is, let's see, 7 points out of a possible 12.
Yes.
And then I have 10 points out of possible 12. Man,
Punchy.
Hey, not bad. No,
it's weirdly
negative.
positive for you, Nick. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
weirdly positive for you, Nick.
That's crazy. You mentioned the finishing spot in the league. I mean, after the window is closed, we said that we would just kind of do an assessment once we had the full complement of players available to kind of do this assessment. Where do you think that Chelsea finish now versus maybe where you thought of the summer?
Well, the same. I tipped Chelsea to finish in third, and I think that City will finish fourth. So, and I think to finish third, they're going to have to get towards sort of 80 points to do that, because I think it will be a little bit more points than last season. I think it was kind of early 70s got third last season. I think you're going to need a few more points to get third this season, but I fancy Chelsea to finish third.
Yeah, I'm kind of been thinking about this and just, watching the first few matches of the season, knowing that this is going to be kind of an unorthodox season with the amount of international breaks leading up to a World Cup, all the squad depth and injury issues that we've already talked about. I mean, obviously Liverpool have had a massive summer in terms of signings. I think they should be favorites to win the league again.
Agreed.
It's really hard to win it back-to-back seasons. It's been done, but it's really hard. So it's not going to be as straightforward maybe as it was last year for them. I'm not mega impressed by Arsenal at this point. I think they really struggle in open play, and that could be a real issue for them. City obviously are not what they have been, and I don't know if Rodri is 100% healthy right now. It doesn't seem he's not playing as if he was before.
Yeah.
And Newcastle finally get something done over the line. They've struggled at the start of the season, obviously only on a couple of points, but I think they're kind of an interesting wrench into that. Spurs are an interesting wrench into that, unfortunately for many of us. I,
I
I
saw
don't know
Spurs.
how.
I
Go
saw
ahead.
Spurs lose at home to Bournemouth the other week. I still think Spurs. I think Spurs will be a lot better than last season, but I still think they'll be inconsistent.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of saying I'm giving all that context because I think before the window shut, I had us finishing third. I was very much on the same page as you. If we are able to keep our defensive record together and find some goals, it could be a second place finish. It could be a fourth place finish if we don't. I think we'd struggle to finish below fifth at this point. Obviously stuff can happen. Cole Palmer gets injured for
Yeah,
the
yeah,
season, all
exactly.
this stuff. Like, I say that of course within context, but I'm not convinced by anyone in the top five that they're like running away with it. Is that fair?
I think that's fair. I agree with you. I make Liverpool favourites, but don't necessarily think it'll be a walk in the park for them. Let's see with Arsenal. I on paper, I think Arsenal have had a good summer and should be stronger and should put up more of a challenge to Liverpool. But on the eye test so far, we've not seen it. So slightly let's see with Arsenal. And I'm still confident. I'm confident Chelsea will progress from last season, will be better from last season, will score more goals than last season, will finish with more points than last season. And I don't have any great confidence in City coming strong again, to be honest with you. So that's why I put Chelsea third. I always say that the real season kind of starts now because when the transfer window's open is still open, I just think there's so many clubs impacted by that. And you get teams having great starts and terrible starts based on the transfer window. And I always feel that once it shuts and the sort of 5 or 6 games after it shuts, you start to get a better idea of where teams are going. And God, that better be the case with Villa. Otherwise, we're in for a horrendous season. But I think the season starts here. And I think that the points that you pick up before are bonus points, and Chelsea got some nice bonus points in the bag before the season sort of starts proper, as it were.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting place for Chelsea to be. Obviously, you don't really leave London until the end of September, and that
Yeah.
has to be kind of beneficial. Look, Chelsea have a difficult run coming up as they always do, but it'll be a fascinating
And
October, November for sure.
it will, and the Champions League and Europe's going to have a massive impact on that. Newcastle, on the face of it, have a horrendous European draw, and therefore they could easily end up playing 2 more games by not finishing in the top 8. Does another club have a weird time in Europe, or does one club get particularly impacted by the Europe? There's usually one club who just can't win after European matches for whatever reason. It is hard to predict at the moment, but I do think the European campaign will come into effect as well for some of these clubs, and that's why I don't really fancy Newcastle to have much of an impact around the top 4 and 5, because I just feel that their European campaign looks horrendous for them on the back of a really, really difficult and tumultuous summer for them, and a bad, they got 2 points, a bad first 3 games. So I could see them not really being in that picture. And like you say, I find it really hard, barring some kind of weird injury crisis or some kind of massive implosion within the club. I find it really hard to see a scenario in which Chelsea finish outside the top 4 or 5.
Yeah. So there it is. As of September 9th at whatever 3
When's
o'clock.
my run going to end? I haven't got one wrong yet. My run is going to come to an end though soon, and I fear that once my run ends, all my powers will just dissipate completely, and that'll be the end of my good predicting.
Yeah. Yeah, we call that a Nicolas Jackson scoring run. It's really good, and then it's a little tough.
Yeah, that just fall. I'm just going to fall at some point. I'm going to fall off a cliff really
I I
horribly.
I predict it's going to be the Liverpool game. We'll see. We'll see how that one goes, and then we can reassess. But thank you, of course, for joining Matt and going through a bunch of different stuff between transfers and a little bit of mailbag and some predictions. We will obviously keep this up to date. We have our future questions already in the bag,
Yes.
and look, we're just excited that football is nearing a return after international break. That I'm just so over these international breaks, especially as a U.S.
Well,
fan.
there's another one coming. Another one coming thick and fast. So
October and November.
Yeah, it's once you pass that November one, you're good to go, aren't you? But yeah, until then, it's all a little bit bitty. There's a big England game tonight when we're talking. Big England game in Serbia that I'm looking forward to watching. Not disappointed I'm not over there, but looking forward to watching it.
little more comfortable on the couch.
Exactly.
Look, appreciate everyone tuning in. Thanks for all the questions that were submitted. And until next time, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.